It's interesting to see what happens to meditation when it gets adopted by the Western world. Because what's happening here is that there's something is being highlighted, a clash between two totally different worldviews is being highlighted. Now that sounds quite dramatic. It is quite dramatic, but we don't actually see it. What's happening as far as we're concerned is that we've found out this useful kind of a thing, kind of like, oh yes, there's a nice app, I'm going to download that. But of course, not in a revolutionary way, but in a way that can just facilitate our present set of assumptions about life all the better. So actually, as it happens, our set of assumptions about life is causing us problems. It's going against the grain in a big way, and that's throwing up loads of problems, both psychological problems and other problems as well. Climate change problems, we could say, just because of our way of being in the world, which is all about expanding, all about progressing, all about running ahead without wondering what it is we're running towards, but just feeling that the very action of running or advancing or expanding or carrying on what we're already doing is going to take us to a good place, and it isn't. Most definitely, that type of unconscious behavior where we keep on doing what we always do because it feels too bad to stop and reflect, clearly that can't bring us anywhere good. So the nature of this fundamental difference between the two worldviews and the fact that meditation and the way we're using it highlights this difference is completely lost on us. Dramatic or not, we don't even get it. We don't get it at all. We're just carrying on with business as usual because that's what it's all about. Not questioning the bigger picture, fixing any small problems that come along for the sake of allowing us to carry on with business as usual. Now we could flip over and start seeing the problems that come along as indications that, hey, maybe this isn't such a great direction to be going in, but we don't. We just come down very heavily on these problems and we demonize them to hell and back. The damn problems, they're stopping me doing the thing. So it sounds like the thing is really important to us, but it isn't really. Well, it is in one way, but it's not important in the sense that we want to know about it because we don't want to question it, because when we question it, we might find out that thing is a kind of a stupid thing, which would then lead us on to think, well, why am I making everything about the thing if the thing is a stupid thing? So we don't want to do that. We don't want to know what the thing is. We just want it to remain unquestioned as something that is just obviously very, very important, and we don't even need to think about it because it's so important. And what that thing is just us doing what we always do. So meditation comes to us as a way of fixing these little annoying problems, whatever they might be: anxiety, stress, anger, but remaining completely unaware and unattentive to the bigger picture. And this is one of the critiques that's been raised in many places with regard to Western mindfulness, that it's been used by the system to help compensate for its own inherent and irresolvable flaws. So that's fair enough. That's a good critique. Not that anyone's going to pay a damn bit of difference to it, but it's good to have it there. We can, if we want to, we can turn to it and think, yeah, other people are thinking in this way too. It's just that the mainstream isn't, because the mainstream never does. That's not the nature of the mainstream, to be interested in critiques of the way things are being done. but it does throw a fascinating light, an astonishing light on what the two different worldviews are. So I'm just going to talk about that for a short while, just what the differences are. In order to do this, we can just talk about the two modalities of being in the world, which I've talked about before, I think, but it's something that we could just say is to do with directed behavior versus spontaneous behavior. So in the directed behavior mode, doing mode, we want things to happen in the way we say. We want to be the boss. We want to call the shots. So if stuff is to happen, I have to give it my say-so that it's good, that's kosher, it's okay. I said it can happen, therefore it's okay. Stuff that happens when I haven't said it can happen, not okay. That's bad news. That's our basic everyday modality, purposeful mode. Of course, that is purposeful mode. What else is purpose apart from saying that this is the purpose for me doing this to make this happen? And if anything else happens instead, well, that's bad news. It shouldn't happen. That's the F word, failure. Oh no, I failed to make things happen the way I imagine they should happen, or want them to happen, for whatever reason. That's a very handy way of talking about our basic everyday way of being in the world. The other way of being in the world is a lot less narrow, it's a lot more open-minded. So the other way of being in the world is to see what happens next. So I'm not controlling. I don't need to control to see what happens next. I'm seeing what happens next when I don't control. So obviously I don't need to control in order to see what happens next when I don't control. That's not purposeful. I have no purpose in this. What's my purpose? If I had a purpose, it would be control. There's no purpose. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But something will happen. Stuff happens. Life happens. And really what this is, it's kind of like I'm having a genuine non-abusive relationship with reality. So if you think about this in terms of relationships, I could be having a relationship with someone and I could have ideas about how I think they should be. So I could, in various ways, either subtle ways or not so subtle ways, try to get them to accord with how I think they should be. And just supposing that I'm able to do this, that does happen in relationships, then I can have a relationship with this person that I've got to be the way I think they ought to be. Now, that's not a real relationship because I'm only having a relationship with my own construct. I've turned the other person into my own construct, and then I'm saying, great, let's hang out, let's relate. But you can't relate to your own construct. That's not communication. That's not relationship. Relationship is between me and something that isn't me. It's me reaching out into the world. It's not me looping around in a claustrophobic closed circuit. So this problem comes up all the time in relationships because we can't help controlling. We control without even knowing that we're controlling. So of course we can't help controlling. And this ruins relationships very reliably. You could absolutely rely on this type of business to ruin a relationship. But actually, we don't really care because our number one priority isn't relating honestly to a reality that's out there or to a person that's out there. Our number one priority when we're in everyday unconscious mode is to get things to be the way we want them to be, the way we think they ought to be, the way that is convenient for us on our basis. It's all happening in relation to me and the way I want things. So that's the number one. Anything else is second. Okay, relationships are good. We need relationships. Relationships are great. We all know that. But not as great as me having some kind of security of being in control. Not as great as that. That's the number one great. That's our situation. We like to pretend that we are interested in the spontaneous life and being open-minded and seeing what happens. The hell we do. The hell we do. We just put on a kind of a pretense that fools us, so we think we're okay. We think we're not control freaks when we are. So the other mode would be, obviously, where the number one priority is to acknowledge or relate to or perceive the external, the other reality outside of me as it actually is, whether I like it or not. What the hell does it matter whether I like it or not? What's that got to do with anything? So when it's another person, it's like valuing them for being who they are, being interested in them for being who they are, and not wanting to turn them into a screen for me to project my ideas or cultural assumptions onto. Sounds very straightforward, and it is, but it's rare enough at the same time. Now, when we talk about control mode or purposeful mode or doing mode, there's something that's very central to that, and that is the idea of the executive self, the self which has agency to get things to be the way that it wants them to be. So there's kind of two things here. They're both the same things, but initially they come across as two things. So one is this important thing of me wanting to be in control, feeling comfortable if I am in control, uncomfortable if I'm not. So what's all that about? Now, we don't see anything wrong with that because we see control as good, we see succeeding as good, we see obtaining the outcomes that we want as good, super kudos everywhere. The more you can do that, the more super kudos you've got. That's great, etc., etc. So we don't see anything funny about it, but really what the controlling is about, what this perceived self-efficacy is all about, the perception that I have agency, can get things to be the way I want them to be, call the shots. What that's all about is reaffirming the existence of the one who wants to get what they want, the one who is controlling. So controlling really, if I'm an effective controller, or rather if I have the illusion that I'm an effective controller, that's all it is an illusion, and that creates this perception that there is this agency there, this capacity to choose and decide and say what happens. That's agency. That's agency is what makes the self be the self. That sense of perceived self-efficacy, as your man says, whatever his name is. Now that's funny because in our Western psychology, perceived self-efficacy, Seligman, isn't it? Seligman's perceived sense of perceived self-efficacy seemed to be important for sanity, important for mental health, because how can you go around without this sense of self-efficacy? But what the sense of self-efficacy really is, it's just a sense of self. That's what we want. Yeah, I'm the captain of this boat. Yeah. In reality, coming back to reality, we can talk about reality as well as what our culture says is reality. In reality, there is no captain to the boat. The boat hasn't got a captain. There's no captains anywhere. None of the boats have captains. Because it's a spontaneous phenomenon. Everything happens spontaneously, as it does, by itself. Self-so, as Alan Watts says. I think he says something like that. So this is the spontaneous world where things don't happen because it's part of some kind of divine plan, but they happen because they happen. That's what spontaneity is. It means there's no agency. It means there's no purposeful controller behind the scene, which is how we like to imagine God Almighty. It's purely a projection of our culture as a supreme controller. And we fit into his plan. How very different it is, though, if everything just happens as it happens and no one knows what's going to happen because it's all spontaneous. It's not something that's been decided in advance. It's all like an experiment. No one knows what's going to happen, but we'll take off the brakes. Well, there were never any brakes there anyway, apart from in our own heads. But it's as if it is this type of glorious experiment where everything is just allowed to happen and see what things do, what they're going to do. Now, our prejudice is to say that's bad news. It's going to be chaos. All the bad things will happen then, no good things. But that's just us overvaluing ourselves. When things happen to accord to our assumptions about the world, our assumptions about how things should be, we say, yeah, that's good stuff, that's good stuff. It isn't. It's just our prejudice is being reflected back at us. So as we think they're not prejudices, but it's true. So that situation, that claustrophobic, self-referential situation is what we see as good mental health. And it's that self-referential situation, that loop, where we react only to our own projections or to our own assumptions there as they are mapped out on the world, as if they're real. We see that as being fantastic. Actually, it's no different from digging a hole in the middle of the lawn and throwing yourself down it. It's an abdication from life, not life. Life is where things happen as they're going to happen, whether I like it or not. And there's something about this, because when we say whether I like it or not, whether I approve of it or not, whether I'm prepared to rubber stamp it or not, that sounds bad, because we automatically think of all these things happening and being powerless to stop it and just feeling dreadful and out of control and all the rest of it. But that isn't what it's like. That isn't what life is like when we relinquish control. The reason it isn't is because our controlling reifies the image of the controller, which isn't a real thing. There's no captain of the boat. And so, because we value this illusion of the controller so much, we'll put up with any crap, essentially. And we do put up with a hell of a lot of crap. But when we don't put controlling up so high on our list of priorities, then what happens is we don't reify the image of the controller. So there's no controller there with his or her brittle ideas about the world to be infringed or to be disrespected. If I don't have any opinions, my opinions can't be disrespected. If I don't have any beliefs, my beliefs can't be disrespected. So I don't go around feeling hard done by and oppressed and worried and fraught because everything's out of control, because there's no controller. Everything is harmonious. It's only the controller trying to control all the time and create a world that matches what the controller's unconscious assumptions think that life should be. That's the disharmony. That's the disharmony that can never be fixed, because when we try to fix it, the fixer, or the would-be fixer, is the controller, and the controller, or the purposeful doer, is the cause of the disharmony. So this is why in Taoism they say that to try to accord with the Tao is to deviate from it. The reason for that is because the one who tries to accord with the Tao is the problem in the first place. The one who tries to accord with the Tao is a problem because it's a reified image of a captain where there isn't a captain. There's no need for a captain. You can throw the captain overboard. The hell with him. We don't need him. He just makes things worse. Everything happens by itself perfectly. It's only when we try to control that we end up in this situation where life is a problem and we keep having trying to fix it and to make it right again, because we've identified with this position where there's loads of rules about what's right and what's not right, what's good and what's not good. Therefore, we're condemned to a life of trying to get the universe to accord with this, which we might succeed at more or less on and off for a while, and then we won't because we'll run out of steam. That's what life is, as far as the Western mentality is concerned. And as I was saying, meditation or mindfulness is just one more way to do this, which is obviously very bizarre. It's fascinatingly bizarre. But what the hell do we think we're doing? So really, practicing meditation isn't for the benefit of the reified self-image. To allow it to live its life, fulfill its plans a bit better. It's a state of mind in which we're not obsessively trying to control, or not just control, but project opinions about things. So even if I can't control a damn thing, I still have an opinion on everything under the sun, and that's control, because I'm controlling the meaning of what things have. If I have an opinion about you, I'm controlling the meaning of you. If I say you're an idiot, I've controlled the meaning of you, so you're now just an idiot. That's what we do with our opinions. We just put labels on stuff and make it be what we say it is, and that's control. So meditation is like when we don't obsessively do that all the time, we take a break from our opinions. God, you'd think we'd be awfully tired of them, wouldn't you? We spend our entire lives reiterating them, and they're not. They're pretty banal anyway. And if they're banal, the first couple of times, after the second million time coming out with it, how banal is that going to be? But we do it all the same, because it's very important to reify the self-image, and opinions is one key way that we get to reify the self-image and create the idea of this essential controller who has to control everything. But if we take a break from that, then we develop a more spacious situation where there's no control and we get to see what that feels like. And that's very interesting. It's actually not banal at all to go around without having to reify that illusion of the self-concept the whole time. It frees us up to actually appreciate life.